beautiful sunny day, so we will try not to keep you too long, but I know that the mayor has a lot of great information to share with us this morning. You know, it's been a difficult time since March, but Clarington has fared well. I think that's because of our open communication, collaboration, and partnerships that we all foster and maintain regardless of what we're going through. So thank you to everybody on this team and beyond for sharing with us your insights in what this pandemic has done to you and your business. It's been incredibly valuable, not only for the Board of Trade, but for building collaborations and partnerships that maybe were not there or not as strong before this all happened. So I like to start the day off with a bit of a positive attitude. So there we go. I think that's a great thing that's come out of this. Mayor Foster, I know that you're incredibly busy, and so we want to thank you for taking the time, and I understand you brought your A-team with you to help answer some questions for us. Without further ado, everybody on the call, I'm sure knows Mayor Adrian Foster. The mayor's in his third term as the mayor of Clarington. He's been involved in numerous organizations, whether they were building a strong social fabric and helping with children's groups and church groups and community groups across the municipality for well over 20 years, and sits on many boards and is chair of finance for the region of Durham. He is chair of the Canadian Association of Nuclear Host Communities and a board member for Lexicon, but most importantly, he's a great advocate and a great leader for the municipality of Clarington. So with that, I will just mention that everybody is now on mute, and if you have questions, please put them in the chat. And I'm going to hand it over to you, Mayor Foster.
So Sheila, thank you ever so much. We're living in interesting times, so this is not the normal speech that I would give. Most of you are usually around tables. You've had a couple of glasses of wine, perhaps, and the stories that are are way more funny. And as much as this is different, I'm going to try to keep my comments fairly short, so that my A-team, I heard a president describe his senior executive team as secret weapons. And I just loved that. So these guys and beyond are the secret weapons that we have working for us in Clarington. And our secret weapons today, I've got Andy Allison, our CAO. He's going to speak a little bit to a major shift. There's been a reorg in Clarington. And this has been ongoing for a long time, but significant steps that you may or may not be aware of. Faye Langmaid, our acting director of planning, and she's going to speak to a couple of different things, but we've got a CIP program that will be of big interest to the business community. We're dealing with that Monday night. Steve Brake, I'm looking at my notes because I'm not sure who's in and who's not in. Steve Brake, I think I suspect you all know Steve, and Steve's a guy that's responsible for everything that makes Clarington look so pretty and far deeper than that as well. So I'm going to broadly describe that as works. And then George Acorn, who's responsible for getting our rec services reopened, probably the most difficult task. I think we've got Chair Henry. Is Chair Henry on? He was thinking about joining us. I don't know if he could or not, but I know he is addressing the Board of Trade. You will want to hear what is happening at Durham Region. Things are happening in Durham that could not have happened a couple of years ago. So a significant change there. I will give John a shout out. You will really want to listen to the amazing work that's going on there. And we may have Councillor Trail or Councillor Zwart. They had indicated that they might be joining us. So folks, thank you for that. I'm going fast. I always do. I always start with a story. And, so that's a tradition that I'm not going to stop today. So I heard a story about a fellow who wanted to get into a bar. He was meeting a date for the first time. It was important that he get into the bar. And as he's walking in, the bouncer said, "Sir, I'm sorry, but you can't get in without a necktie." And he didn't have a tie. He knew that his date was inside the bar, had no way of getting in touch with her, and started to panic. He's rifling through his car, and the only thing that he could find was a set of jumper cables. So he ties the jumper cables around his neck, the best thing that he can do for a necktie, goes up to the bouncer and he says, "Look, it's a tie. Will this work?" And the bouncer looked at him and said, "Yeah, sure, just don't start anything." So I always tie, Sheila, thank you for laughing. I always tie, the story back to what's going on in the town. And the way I'm tying this one back is 2020 has been a really terrible year in a number of ways. And that is a really, really terrible joke. It seemed absolutely fitting. So I'm gonna launch into probably what you want to hear instead of terrible jokes. So the first is in terms of Clarington, how we are doing. And on the how we are doing, a very, very quick rundown. And we are encouraging you to ask questions. This is maybe more of a town hall than the mayor's address. Clarington's actually doing pretty well. So if we look at the revenues from taxes coming into town, we're very concerned with regards to people not being able to keep up on those payments. And largely, we are not seeing a crunch on revenues from taxes coming in. We're probably better off, we are better off than what we thought we would be. In terms of expenses, no surprise, with a lot of things being shut down, we have actually saved a fair amount of money during the pandemic, which has helped. And then you may or may not know that the province gave us $2.1 million for safe recovery. We are not sure what qualifies for that 2.1 or not. And the province does want money back if we don't spend it. But we can't complain too bitterly about the shape that we are in. Moving forward, and as a lot of you, as you've reopened businesses, as you've had to put PPE in place, as you've had to put new protocols in place, we know that there is going to be some pain ahead. So as an example, if you look at recreation, again, true of many of your businesses, as we have reopened, we will see costs accelerate and far fewer revenues coming in. So even under a normal recovery, ignoring a second wave, which we can't ignore, we know that there are challenges ahead of us, but Clarington came into this in good fiscal shape. Our reserve balances are pretty good. Trevor, our treasurer, has done a great job, and Nancy before him. So all in all, not so bad. A different story if you look at Durham Region, the province, the federal government, when you've got to run buses that are empty, as an example, when you need to provide a lot of the services that the lower tiers don't provide. You might hear something a little different from John when he speaks. The other thing that's important for you folks to know is that there's a sense out there that as of March 13, everything shut down. And I can tell you that Clarington never shut down. We have been exceptionally busy. To give you a sense of what exceptionally busy is, our development charge fees are up 300% from 2019. So if you can, imagine the work that is going on behind the scenes, and I can tell you that planning has been exceptionally busy here. So our rec services, of course, far quieter. but those folks were retasked, and they were retasked doing all of the stuff that still needed to be done, whether we were looking at parks. We got to some projects that have been outstanding for years, digitizing documents. But if you talk to staff, please don't ask them what they did with all of their time off, particularly the department heads, because they were really, really, really busy. The other thing that I would suggest that we did a little bit differently in Clarington was our approach to COVID and the approach that I think we hope to carry forward. So we are encouraging people to be vigilant and safe. We are encouraging people to take nothing for granted, but we understand that there is a balance to be had in terms of what we do and what restrictions we do, and how long people are going to tolerate what I'll consider a lockdown. So we got out of the gate a wee bit earlier than the province on shutting down playgrounds, but we never shut down the parks and we never shut down the trails, because we understood that people needed the opportunity to get out, get exercise, just escape from their houses, or in the case of my wife, escape from me. Probably. Thank you for smiling at that. If Deb heard the things I said about her, I'm really glad that she doesn't listen to these. I would be in serious trouble and perhaps never be seen again. So we looked at that. A number of municipalities shut down fishing. So our approach was to not shut down fishing. We bumped up patrols, and in very, very few cases had to encourage people to do appropriate physical distancing. And if any of you fish, when the fishing season opens, we are typically absolutely jammed. And we were concerned with other areas being closed that everyone would funnel into Clarington. There was pressure to shut the beaches down. Again, the same thing. We dedicated additional resources and had very few challenges at the beaches. If any of you, by the way, know Gary Cole, if you don't know Gary, if you go down to West Beach, he's the older gentleman sitting at the end of the pier, who is welcoming everyone. The residents down there in those cottages are the best ambassadors that you could ever imagine for all of Clarington. And for a lot of people who've never been down, it is not a big beach, but it is a very, very pretty beach. I would encourage you to check that out. So I'd suggest that there were a number of things like that, fireworks being another example. We didn't hold a big display that would gather a bunch of people, but we saw no problem with people setting off fireworks in front of their house and having neighbors, looking from their porches. And it is very much a balancing act. And I can tell you, to my mind, our staff were absolutely amazing at managing the challenges in front of them. So that's sort of the COVID stuff. We're all getting a little bit tired of COVID. I'm going to go really quickly on some major initiatives that are going on in behind the scenes. So the nuclear file, the big news on that is the refurbishment, which carries on. That's $12.8 billion. They have done one reactor, and that is right in our backyard, $12.8 billion. The next step in terms of the nuclear file are things called small modular reactors. This is the future of nuclear. Canada is one of the global leaders in terms of being the first to deploy SMRs. There is global competition, the Chinese and the Russians and the US being lead contenders. Britain is in there as well. There is genuine concern with licensing and technology around some of the Chinese and Russian proposals. And we all understand that if someone gets it wrong, it'll be catastrophic for the industry and for the area that these SMRs are in. As Sheila had mentioned, I'm chair of the Canadian Association of Nuclear Host Communities. The nuclear file is exceptionally important to Clarington. We have the only site that is currently licensed for nuclear new build and could in fact host you know, an SMR, and there are a bunch of different flavors of SMRs. While they say that they are small modular reactors, some of them are very small. They could power remote towns. So think of the far north where, you know, tens of thousands of liters of diesel are burnt to keep the power on. These could do that. You could also look at things like the Ring of Fire supplying the needs of the mining industry, you know, steam for oil extraction. So we are stepping up our engagement both from CANAC, and you'll hear, I think, more about this from Chair Henry and Clarington on that SMR file. So this is Clarington stepping up perhaps on a world stage. You will be hearing more about from the Nuclear Waste Management Organization. They're the group that is responsible for the used fuel program, very long-term view. They've tucked aside $16 billion to deal with that. They've got 2 host sites. They've winnowed that down from 12, and these were sites that approached NWO, said that, you know, we're interested in looking. Those are South Bruce and Ignis today. And again, as host communities, not just Clarington, we will be helping it with that file for those communities that don't have a background, you know, in the nuclear industry, where we have a long-standing understanding and background of that. So that again is on a national stage, Clarington and the other nuclear host communities being able to step up. Huge amount of interest in broadband. We did have a meeting yesterday with a significant provider. We are very, very frustrated as we have opened up the broadband file. We are shocked at how that industry works. And the deeper that we get, perhaps the more shocked we are on that. We are hoping once again to be able to tell the community what plans are in place moving forward. I have told you this 3 years in a row. Promises have been made, promises have not been kept. We really are working on that. You know, other files that we're looking at, the GO train, I can tell you that dialogue is going on. Later on, we've got a meeting with, later on October, I believe it is, we've got a meeting with Metrolinx. But from all of the reports, Metrolinx is engaged. The chair of Metrolinx did made a pointed positive comment the other day at a conference that Premier Ford held in Whitby with regards to the Lakeshore East expansion. I can tell you again, if you look at Durham Region has stepped up in a way that they never have before, you know, in promoting that. And we are working very closely, obviously, with Oshawa, and to a lesser extent, you can understand why with Whitby on that. But the other is, you might have read in the paper, the MPPs do understand that we need contracts signed, shovels in the ground even better prior to the next election, if there is to be any credibility on that moving forward. And I would encourage you to let them know how important that is. And a couple of other files, for those of you who know, I'm a bit of a fanatic where Mosport is involved. If you take a look at other tracks around the world, there is massive opportunity. So we're in the process now of trying to bring together some of the players up there. And if you go to the track, the guys in t-shirts and jeans are almost all multi-millionaires. You know, this is recreation for exceptionally wealthy individuals, and sometimes they're billionaires. You wouldn't know it. You would think that they're hanging around the track because they've got nothing better to do. But there's a huge and significant opportunity there. And I'm going to turn it over to Andy to talk about the org review, Faye to talk about the CIP, which is of real interest, I hope, to you guys. We've got a couple of questions. I will encourage some other questions, but I will leave you with a thought on COVID. So we have heard that, you know, a result of the pandemic is that we have all reverted back to simpler things. So, you know, for a while it was difficult to find flour because people started cooking and baking again. I understand that bicycles are hard to find, and cycling things because people are getting into cycling, perhaps a simpler way of living. And it occurred to me that that enjoying a sunrise is something that I'm hearing from a lot of people. I looked at my LCBO bills, and they may be tequila sunrises that maybe a lot of us are enjoying. But you know, a simpler life. And Andy, with that, I'm going to turn it over to you to speak quickly about the org review and big changes that we've been working on for years.
Thank you, Worship. Could I just confirm that everybody can hear me? I'm not concerned if they can see me. I'm just hoping they can hear me.
Yeah, you should be okay, Andy.
I'm okay, Adam? Okay, thank you. So thank you, Worship, for the opportunity to speak to this group here this morning. I'm going to speak very briefly about our reorganization. It is not a COVID topic, but there are some connections to some COVID challenges that we've had to face as a result of you know, some things we're trying to do outside of COVID. So for context, late last year, we actually received some money from the province under the Accountability and Audit Fund. And that helped us undertake a fairly big initiative, which was to look at our organizational structure. For context, those of you that have been around Clarington for a while will know that we really haven't changed much in the way of our organizational structure for probably close to 20 years. The last time we looked at the structure, we didn't have Gmail, Facebook, the iPhone. These things didn't exist. So a lot has changed in our society, locally and globally, over that time. So it was time to actually just have a look at how we were delivering our services. The hope and expectation was we could achieve greater efficiencies, perhaps find some cost savings. We did actually reduce our labor force a little bit, but that was almost exclusively through attrition. We were also looking at ways to perhaps rationalize some of the service deliveries. And for those who've been around Clarington for a while, you may recall last term of council, it probably came up on the floor of council, I'm going to say at least 10 times, what we were going to do down at Clarington Fields in terms of a public washroom. And every single time it came up, the elected officials in the room and some senior staff, myself included, weren't sure who to ask the question of because it wasn't sure who was delivering the service. Questions were put to the then Director of Engineering, the Director of Operations, Director of Community Services. And that's the type of thing we were trying to, in part, deal with, rationalize service delivery. By the way, on that particular example, I don't think they ended up building a public washroom. It may have been because of the confusion as to who was able to do what. There's a portable facility down there now. But that's the type of thing we were trying to address through our review of our structure. We engaged a lot of people, including Sheila and her colleagues at CBOT. But one thing I want to make very clear is that our corporate reorganization did not touch upon the future role of economic development within the municipality. And that was explicitly excluded from the review. The reason for that is the strategic plan that was adopted by council has included in it an initiative to look at, explore an economic development strategy. People at CBOT are familiar with this, and that exploration will require extensive public engagement. And the exercise that we embarked on internally, frankly, wasn't resourced, or we weren't capable of resourcing it such that we could deal with economic development, but we will be. In 2021, we will be reaching out to members of the community. Many people that are participating in this meeting will be asked for their input in terms of how Clarington should be looking at delivering economic development services into the future beyond the end of 2021. So please stay tuned, and when given the opportunity, we would certainly appreciate feedback from everybody in terms of that particular aspect of our service delivery. So what we actually did end up focusing on, things other than economic development, was, well, frankly, everything else. I said I wasn't really going to talk about COVID, but I will very briefly. The timing for the rollout of our structural review or structural adjustments was absolutely horrible. I think we got final direction from council on, it was the first week of March. I rolled out some town halls to staff to educate, inform, and hopefully get buy-in on March the 11th. And on March 13th, we had an emergency meeting to close down rec facilities, and everything at that point focused on COVID. And so we haven't really had front and center of the organizational review or the steps we're going to take. However, as Adrian said, behind the scenes, we've been doing quite a bit that the public wouldn't necessarily be aware of. And carrying forward with the reorganization is one of those things. And I think I would guess we're about 80% through the steps that were identified as part of the reorganization. There's a lot of stuff that we're still going to be doing, and frankly, a lot of it will continue forever. A lot of continuous improvement exercises. We're going through a process of establishing benchmark and key performance indicators that will turn on a lot of the work that we've done just by way of reorganization. At the risk of grossly oversimplifying for the benefit of people that are participating in this meeting, I think the biggest changes would be in the area of what we now call public works, which is a combination of the former operations department and the former engineering department. And that, in the main, was to try and rationalize service delivery to deal with the types of problems I talked about in terms of the public washroom. We also moved some parts of those previous departments into other areas. I think we now have the ability to make it easier to say we have one-stop shopping, and you know where the one stop is. You won't get bounced around the organization trying to figure out who does what. At least that was our objective. In terms of planning and development, the building officials are now part of the planning and development department. But in terms of the ratepayers, the citizens, the development community dealing with our organization, you actually won't see much changing on that front because the CBO and his staff have always operated somewhat autonomously. The thought was that we could bring them over into planning and have a more development focused initiative, working with Sheila's team, working with a lot of the staff that are focusing more on the development side. So that was part of the theory behind that reorganization. And I think the other shift that may be of interest to people on this call would be tourism. Tourism used to report to the CAO's office. We've moved them over to be part of community services. And one of the main reasons for doing that was, frankly, the synergies between a lot of what George Acorn's staff are doing out there in terms of interacting with the public and getting involved and participating in a lot of things. And I know Sheila and her staff will understand that. They've worked a lot over the years with the services that George Acorn staff have offered to the public. There's also a possibility of the tourism staff being relocated to be within some of our recreation facilities. There just seem to be a lot of synergies there. Anecdotally, I can tell you that the people that are in tourism are very happy not to have to report to the CAO anymore. It's been a great move from their perspective. The only other change I'm going to comment on, and I'll do so very briefly, is a change that didn't actually happen. We actually did engage a consultant who sought input from a variety of sources, gave us recommendations, and we went to council to get their approval or get their comments on some of the recommendations. One of the things that council did not change, and this is based on feedback from the public largely, was animal services. There were savings that could have been achieved. That was the advice from the consultants that looked at it. But council said, no, they didn't want to see that happen. The only reason I mention that is to highlight the fact that when it comes to public services like here in Clarington, in terms of delivering expectations and meeting expectations, it's not always about the bottom line. It's not always about saving $1 or $2. It is about service delivery. And so I think what we've put in place here through our reorganization is largely an effort to realize savings, to create efficiencies, but at the same time, make sure that we are still providing and in fact enhancing the service delivery levels to the extent that we can. And while I have everybody's attention, just want to mention one other thing. It's not strictly part of the org review, but a few weeks back, council did authorize staff to replace our antiquated, outdated, soon to be obsolete software system. In terms of, it was a land-based system, but basically we've replaced it with a system that will extend across the entire organization. And we are looking at achieving greater efficiencies in terms of service delivery in many areas. But of note, something has come to the forefront, certainly during COVID, is the need to have digital communications, digital submissions. Sheila and her team are going to be working with the development community. Many people on this call are part of that development community. We are going to be working very hard to, as quickly as we can, move over to digital submissions of as many things as we can. Building permit applications, planning applications. We've seen during COVID how important that is to be able to do business in that way. And we're grateful to council for having authorized us to go forward with some software implementation that will allow us to do that. Hopefully deliver economic development services writ large to the to our stakeholders in Clarington. And those are my comments, Sheila. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Andy. I think you did touch, everybody's touched on those points on the agenda, so thank you for doing that. Maybe what you can comment on too, Mayor Foster, is pertaining to COVID. You did mention the impacts of closures and the response to COVID, different, supports in place and challenges. Maybe you can touch on the opportunities that were for collaboration, for example, through the BIAs and kind of embracing new ways to bring people together.
Sure, and so one of the big things, the opportunities, and Faye Langmaid is with us. We'll speak to the CIP. I referenced that a little bit earlier. And I'll do a plug for you guys, for the Board of Trade. So a couple things happened, and as the Board of Trade and Office of Economic Development, the integration, Bonnie, between your organization and Durham Region was phenomenal. For members who don't know what was made available in terms of Shop Local, videos that were done, and particularly a push for the ability of businesses to access, I'm going to say online channels. A huge amount of really, really good work was done. And that was collaborative across Durham Region. So I've got to take my hat off to what you have done to try to support business. We have, out of my office, we started weekly. We have moved back from weekly to bi-weekly calls with the BIAs in Clarington, and those calls include, Sheila has made all of those, Simon Gill from Durham Region, the MPPs or their staff, and the MPs and their staff. And the point of those calls has been to hear from the BIAs what's helpful, what we're doing that's helpful, and sometimes we do things that are not so helpful. And Bonnie, thanks for bringing that up, because for any of you out there that have suggestions in terms of things that we should be considering, we are willing to consider anything. I'll suggest we have an economic development reserve fund. The whole point of that is to promote the economy. Now is the time to do that. And feel free to reach out to me. It is an open door policy, but we will consider just about anything. And we're looking for great ideas. But that may not be a bad segue, for Faye Langmaid. And I think it was actually Faye's idea, or at least her department's idea, and challenges with the anti-bonusing rules. Our hands really are tied. A potential solution and something that Monday night we're rolling out. So I don't mean to to steal the agenda from you, Bonnie, but probably a good time for Faye to jump in.
Yeah,
And I'm turning my video off just to save bandwidth here because it's interesting.
Thanks, Mayor Foster. Faye, did you unmute Faye there, Adam? Perfect. Faye, you're on.
So thank you, and thank you for the lead-in plug there. Community improvement plans are a tool that is available to the municipality under both the Municipal Act and the Planning Act. As the mayor said, we cannot bonus private businesses by providing funding to them, but we can actually provide funding that allow for physical improvements to businesses. So Council directed staff to prepare a community improvement plan and established $1 million fund to support COVID-related improvements that local businesses had to enact to allow them to reopen safely. So staff's role in this was figuring out what those things were that the businesses had to enact to reopen, and what the costs were that they incurred, and what would meet the criteria that is set out in both the Municipal Act and the Planning Act, as in what are those physical improvements. So we have done that. We have issued, as of September 8th, a draft community improvement plan, which has also been issued to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing and Durham Region, because others have to make sure that we're meeting those requirements of those acts. Sarah Allen, who has been the main author of it, will be presenting it on Monday night at the statutory public meeting. So if you're interested in attending that, it will be live streamed. Plus you can register as a delegation if you would like to do that and speak to it. Briefly, I'll tell you what the incentive programs are. We have a physical distancing improvement grant. We have a business adaptation grant. We have a COVID-19 related improved ventilation grant. And we have adaptation to outdoor operation. As many of you know about the outdoor patios that were quickly implemented by a number of the restaurants. And we have a COVID-19 related technology improvement grant, which is more about wiring within your business to be able to use your technology. So Sarah will go through those. We're hoping that many of the businesses will apply for the grants once council has authorized them. And it's been very interesting for us because we had to phone a number of the businesses and talk to them. And really, frankly, that was an education for all of us who did that, finding out what really caused what the changes were that they had to make in their businesses. And in many businesses, the dollar values are not huge, but because they were also closed, and because they also have to do a lot of PPE now, even minor amounts like up to $5,000 or $10,000 is going to really, really help those businesses. So that's what the community improvement plan is about. So hopefully people will come out and support that. And it'll be approved by council.
Thank you, Faye, for sharing that initiative, and to you and your team at the municipality and putting all that work into that. It's not a small feat, I'm sure. And any way that we can help to share the message of this opportunity, we're there, absolutely. And I just want to remind everybody that the chat function is up and running. Please feel free to put any questions in the chat and we'll vet those for sure. But we do have some questions that we'd like to pose to the mayor and his team at the municipality. A few questions that have been sent in prior to this meeting today. There was a question on climate change. How is climate change impacting the business community? Specifically, somebody sent in. So if anybody wants to or is capable of answering that question. Faye, is that your hand waving about?
That is my hand waving about.
Okay, you go ahead. Thank you.
So climate change is upon us. We will have hotter summers. We will have warmer winters. We will have large and more frequent storms due to climate change. And all of those things affect the business community. There could be an increased vulnerability for flooding, for building damages, for power outages, and those are due to extreme weather, and they're also expensive things. So the municipality has been working away. We were successful in getting a grant from the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, and we've hired a climate change response coordinator. And he's been working with an interdepartmental team to develop a corporate climate action plan. That plan will guide the municipality in reducing greenhouse gas pollution and identifying and reducing the risks and vulnerabilities associated with climate change and helping to safeguard the community's well-being. So they've been working away on that diligently. It's under development and we are anticipating completion of it in late 2020. At the same time, the region is also very involved in this. So the region has been doing a couple different studies. They've done the Durham Community Climate Adaptation Plan and a Durham Community Energy Plan, both of which have been endorsed in principle by Clarington Council. They are working on the actions that are outlined in both of those plans. And our climate change response coordinator works very closely with Durham Region on those items.
Thank you, Faye, for that. I appreciate that. It's great to see these initiatives in place collaboratively to address greenhouse and climate change. Thank you. I have a question that I just noticed popped in there before I asked you about the climate change question. Carolyn Peterborough from OMAFRA has asked a question pertaining to the community-wide CIP. So she asked, are they for a specific area, for example, like the BIAs, or are they open municipal-wide?
So thank you, Carolyn, for that question. It is a municipal-wide community improvement plan. When council authorized us to do it, they passed a bylaw that included the entire geographical area of Clarington. From our calculation, there are about 5,000 businesses in Clarington that could tap into that fund. And the target that council asked us to specifically go after was local independent businesses. So that is the way that we have written the community improvement grant. So if you're a large franchise that's corporate and across Canada, you're not going to get support from the community improvement plan. But if you're a small independent business in the downtowns or even out in the rural area, you are going to be eligible for support if you needed to make physical improvements.
Thank you, Faye. And like you said, the criteria is outlined, right? So again, we're happy to help with that information. And Faye, you're going to still be on the line, so don't mute Faye yet. Somebody asked, during all of this uncertainty, new businesses are continuing to come to town. So would you be able to address that, Faye, in kind of from that planning lens, and let us know what we are to expect in the future?
Well, I don't have a list of, thanks Bonnie for the question, but I don't have a list of specific businesses that are out there. But there are new businesses that are under construction in Curtis and in Bowmanville. So it's been interesting. We did think that there would be a slowdown because of COVID. In the end, that has not really occurred. We've issued more building permits this year for both residential and commercial than we did in 2019. So it's been quite optimistic from our point of view because of all of those businesses that are coming in. So the main plaza that's being built in downtown Curtis right now at Trells and Highway 2, there's going to be a Food Basics, a beer store, which will make the people in Curtis really happy, a Dollarama, and I can't remember all the other businesses that are going in there, but it's a 6-building complex. The mayor is waving. So if you unmute the mayor, he'll tell you the rest of the the businesses.
So you guys need to know how painful that was for Faye to suggest that I be unmuted. So it's a great question. So we touched very briefly on the GO train, which is a huge undertaking. You guys know that OPG had spoken to their head office coming, and that dialogue is still going on. And we understand that 2024 head office, and that has absolutely enormous potential. One of the things that Durham Region is doing is pre-servicing of lands, that is using some of the reserves and getting water, sewer into the ground. Ontario's Tech Park and space along Highway 2 in Curtis is identified. Now, those are projects that were already underway. I'm not sure that's anything new for us, but it does speak to it. There have been a number of small business openings, and Bonnie, you have been, no surprise at all of those in the last couple of weeks. So a spa opened in Orono, some resources for special needs adults opened in Orono, at the Aspen Springs. I'm going to miss some, and I'll hear about missing some. Aspen Springs building, just right at Hartwell. There is a new center for special needs children opened up. Joey's World has rebranded as the Clarington Entertainment Complex. So if you want to go axe throwing, and if you haven't done that, it's hilarious. You can go down there and do all of the stuff that you used to be able to do at Joey's World. And I know that I am missing a couple that businesses are still opening, and I've got to hand it to you guys. Good on you for for the risks and the courage that you're showing during the pandemic. So it has been busy out there. And the other is keep a close eye on, we talk about the residential development that is coming in and the plans for mixed use. Exciting times ahead, which is why we're worried about the second phase. We just want to keep that, ball rolling.
Thank you, Mayor Foster, and thank you, Faye, for that insight. I do want to mention too, yes, it is very refreshing to see these openings of businesses, and to your point, our office has not really seen a decline in phone calls and businesses and realtors reaching out to us. People want to make Clarington their home throughout COVID, so that hasn't been disrupted at all. So that's really refreshing to see that activity. And we will be sending out our Clarington Business Development Update the end of next week as well. So that will outline a lot of different projects with some nice pictures of actual shovels and ground next week. There's a question that was posed. And Jeff wants to express kudos to the planning staff for moving files forward during this very difficult time. And his question is the combined consequences of people relocating from urban centers as a result of COVID concerns and the shift to work from home economy has resulted in an unprecedented demand for ground-based housing in Clarington. What is Clarington doing to meet this unanticipated demand? Who's going to field that question? I'm going to say Faye. Faye, you're up. Thank you.
I'm not sure it's a totally unanticipated demand. And this is the reason that we've been quite busy during the whole COVID period in reviewing files. We never stopped accepting applications. We never stopped doing consultations. We are one of the few municipalities that did not at some point stop doing that. And it was mainly because we felt that we really needed to keep the economy rolling along in that way. I think what has happened is that it hasn't really particularly changed the land use form. What it's changed is how the interiors of buildings are going to be looking and what people are going to have on the interiors of buildings. So the housing industry has switched over and is looking at more home offices to make sure that they've accommodated what they need for people who are now going to do work from home. I think we've also seen people who may have moved to Toronto to be more in the center of action look and say, really would rather be back in Newcastle, or really would rather be back in Curtis, and have realized that they don't need to be in Toronto 5 days a week. So they really have embraced being at home more and may only commute 1 or 2 days a week. So that has changed, and that will have an implication for us in future planning about where transit is and how we will deal with all of that. But it's early days. There's been lots of information and sessions that we've been attending about how is it going to long-term impact land use planning. So we'll be taking those lessons and applying them in the future.
Thank you, Faye. And anybody who wants to put a question in the chat, please feel free. We just have one more question that was posed earlier. Save the question for last here. Is Faye, maybe you can comment on the status of Zone Clarington, and what does that look like? And
yeah, so thanks for the question. The rural portion of the zoning bylaw was placed on hold by council last October. At that time, staff committed that we would continue to carry out the site-specific reviews, and staff have done that at a desktop level. However, given COVID-19, we have not been able to do any of the site visits, although not all of the properties require a site visit either. We're currently waiting for the results of the East Gwillimbury zoning bylaw that is before the Local Planning Appeals Tribunal. That hearing has been delayed due to COVID. It has very similar issues compared to what our zoning bylaw has, and the results of it will inform how we end up addressing the mapping that is within our zoning bylaw. So at this point, we've been told that it will not proceed until at least late November, and we're not sure it's going to proceed at that point. In the meantime, we've been making a lot of headway on the urban portion of Zone Clarington. In July, the neighborhood character study and its related bylaw was approved. That will inform the other urban areas within the zoning bylaw. So we've been working away on other aspects of the zoning bylaw, just not the rural portion.
Thanks, Bonnie. Faye, I wonder if you could speak. So part of the zoning bylaw, unfortunately, became exceptionally controversial, and we've lost, to a degree, a major reason for pushing that forward. Can you speak, Faye, please, to one, the simplification, of that? And I mean, there are some parts of that bylaw that have been held up by the controversy that would be really helpful to the community. So the diversified on-farm uses, we're looking at in-law suites. So there's a big piece of that which unfortunately, is not moving forward. But in a world where you look for things that you can all agree on, I think there's a big chunk of this that we can all agree on the positive outcome. Can you speak to that? Because it has gotten lost, and you and your staff, Faye, have done such a huge amount of positive work there.
Yeah, so I think the one really surprising thing about Zone Clarington was that what we did was that we put on the maps what was already in policy from the provincial government in relationship to the Greenbelt and the growth plan and the provincial policy statement. People were shocked when they saw what already existed in those policies and reacted towards them. I understand that, but those policies have been in place for more than 15 years. The reason that we were putting them on the maps was so that people would understand that that existed. Because oftentimes when we have to say no to somebody at the counter, they are very surprised that they can't do something. And many of the complaints that we have gotten during the process is that, well, I wanted to do this, and I had bought this property anticipating that I was going to be able to divide it into 4 pieces and hand it off to my children. You have not been able to do that since probably the 1980s. So in that way, it was a little frustrating that we tried to make it transparent and put the information out there so that people could readily see it and understand it. I think people were really surprised that they didn't have as many options with their property as they anticipated that they did. And then speaking to the other aspect that you brought forward is that there are a number of things that we would like to change about how you can do a mother-in-law suite or a grandparent suite, how you can do on-farm diversified uses that have really truly been lost as part of the review that we've been doing. So the reason that we were doing the review and updating the bylaw was to make it easier to actually get approvals in place for those types of things.
Thank you, Faye, for that. Okay, we're coming up on 11 o'clock. I know you guys have plans today and are busy, so I want to hand it off to Sheila. And again, just remind you, you have a few minutes to ask any questions in the chat, but I'll hand it off to Sheila now.
Can you hear me? So I'm actually going to, before I sort of wrap things up, just offer the mayor a chance to have some closing thoughts. And
well, I'll be really quick. So firstly, the business community, I don't know that we always express how important you are to us. We could very easily be nothing more than a bedroom community, and it is the risks with your capital, your time, with your expertise that you take to bring services, products, and jobs to the municipality. And I would encourage all of you to reach out to us, let us know what you need, and let us know if we're doing something well. Share that, and if there are things that we are not doing well, please share that as well. I've said it before, I'll say it again, that there had been an attitude at staff, and I've talked about a cultural shift, not a change, and this was Andy Allison's line, it's not us and it's not them, it's we, because we are in this boat together. But sometimes at council we need to hear that. Sometimes at council we need to understand that you understand your businesses better than we do, which is why the Board of Trade, business in Clarington, promotes economic development. Don't be shy. You know where to find me, but please don't be shy. And I'll give you a task. One of my favorite poems, Dylan Thomas. Do not go gentle into that good night. If you haven't read that in a while, or if you have never read it, Dylan Thomas. Google, do not go gentle into that good night. And one of the lines is, Good men, the last wave by, crying how bright their frail deeds might have danced in the green bay. So let's not cry about how our frail deeds might have worked out. We have an amazing opportunity, and you folks, to a large degree, are driving the bus. Sheila, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Foster. And thank you again to everybody for joining us today. It's really important that we continue to gather and we continue to share and collaborate and ask the easy and the hard questions. So in closing, I just want to note that we took a little bit of a hiatus in the summer and doing some virtual events, but we are ramping up again. Tanya's been busy lining up all kinds of great things for us all to participate in. And on October 9th, we have Regional Chair John Henry joining us to bring us some news from the region. So thank you, Chair Henry, for agreeing to do that for us. Yesterday, I think it was yesterday or the day before, I'm actually on vacation this week. We sent out a survey to everybody. So if you have seen it and filled it out, thank you. It's helping us provide some insight into what a second wave, which we believe we are in the beginning steps of. So let's see if we can calm that wave down a little bit with a little bit of insight from you. So if you have filled it out, thank you. We've had a really good response rate so far. If you have seen it and haven't filled it out, please fill it out. If you haven't seen it, look in your junk mail. If it's not there, give us a call and we're happy to send it out again. It's really important that we get a really well-rounded perspective across all sectors. So we thank everybody for your participation in that. And second last, Andy, thank you for your leadership and fostering an environment where we are welcome always to participate in conversations with you and the team at Clarington, because we can't do this alone. And I think it's really great to be able to bring those shared voices together. And then in closing, just a little perspective, right? As we look at Clarington and we look at the new businesses coming in, we look at the leads that are coming in through CBOT for new investment, for businesses still wanting to grow, wanting to get into new markets. Public infrastructure projects continued to be worked on, such as the GO train, the hospital expansion, projects at Darlington. We can all sit here and we can all be proud that a lot of people have a lot of confidence in the economy in Clarington. And that's something for us all to stand very proud on and to share with everybody we know. So all your suppliers, all your customers, tell them how wonderful it is here and that it is the place to grow. So with that, I will once again say thank you, Mayor Foster and your team, for sharing a few hours with us this morning, and have a great day, everybody.